many representatives of the various councils that are interested, the ministers, the MPs, the MLAs. This is always when we gather together with a lineup like you see on my right, it's a good news story. Or none of us would be here. I wanted first to acknowledge some of my municipal cohorts whom I know are in the room, Warden Habinski, Mayor Cantwell, Warden Zabian. Chief Peters was going to come, although I don't see him here yet. And Mayor Dagley from Bridgewater was going to be here, and I'm not sure I see Mayor Dagley yet. Nonetheless, as I said, a good news story. And I'm just the traffic controller, so you won't hear a lot from me, but of course, we all want to recognize that we have the Honorable Scott Brison, Colin Fraser, MP, Bernadette Jordan, MP, Keith Irving, MLA, and Glenn LeBlanc, Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer of Bell Canada, all with us today, all of whom have important things to say, and that's why I'm not going to take up any more time or room than is necessary. As far as the agenda is concerned, I'll be introducing someone who will be introducing someone else, and we'll be moving down that agenda in terms of who will be speaking, and they will be introducing the next speaker until such time as somebody stops talking and I have to stand up and fill dead air. But beyond that, this is truly an auspicious occasion. We have auspicious people with us, and we have some very important announcements to be heard. No one tells me the detail. I'm going to be as surprised as many of you are concerning the details of these announcements. So at this point in time, if I may, I'm going to call upon MP Fraser. Colin Fraser, as you know, is a member of Parliament for West Nova, serves in the House of Commons Standing Committee on Veterans Affairs and also on the Standing Committee of Justice and Human Rights. Colin has his LLB from 2007 and lives in the wonderful city of Yarmouth. And he's here to introduce the primary speaker for the evening, or the afternoon. We could be here into the evening. But I trust these folks to stick to their deadlines. Mr. Fraser.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mayor Moutard, and it's certainly a pleasure to be with you this morning in beautiful Greenwich here at Bishop Hall, and I think it's a wonderful place for today's announcement, and thank you all so much for being here. Certainly want to recognize my friend and colleague Bernadette Jordan, the MP for South Shore St. Margaret's, the Honourable Scott Brison. We're always pleased to be in your beautiful riding of King's Hants. Keith Irving, MLA, and Hugh McKay, MLA for Chester St. Margaret's, and all of the councillors and everyone else for being here this morning. Thank you so much. I also want to recognize Glenn LeBlanc from Bell Canada, who's with us, and certainly will be bringing some of the good news. I have the privilege of representing beautiful West Nova, which is the neighboring riding to King's Hants. You may say that it's the gateway to West Nova here in beautiful King's Hants, but I'm lucky for several reasons, and one of the primary ones being that I get to represent an area next to the Honourable Scott Brison. And Scott and his team, including Dale, who I know is here today, have been an incredible help to our office in representing the people of West Nova and all Nova Scotians. And I know that I'm lucky as well to represent part of the Annapolis Valley, and Scott represents part of the Annapolis Valley as well. And so it's always nice to be here in the beautiful Annapolis Valley, and also to talk about important projects, not only for our local communities, but for all of Nova Scotia. Today we're going to be, I look forward to an announcement by Minister Brison regarding high-speed internet. And I can tell you that representing small communities in rural Nova Scotia, one of the most important issues that I heard during my election campaign and since as representative is the need for high-speed internet in small rural communities. It's not only an essential service that allows people to access information, to be able to communicate with government, but it's also an economic imperative. And I know how important it is for small businesses and for people looking to locate to rural Nova Scotia to enjoy our beautiful lifestyle, to ensure that they have access to the internet. And so today's announcement will be welcome news, I'm sure, to all rural communities in Nova Scotia. And it really is an important next step towards making sure that every Nova Scotian has access to high-speed internet. Scott was first elected in 1997 and has represented this area extremely well. He is an excellent member of Parliament, but he is also now the President of the Treasury Board, and as such sits in the Federal Cabinet of Canada and makes all Nova Scotians proud in the work he does. He's a champion for Nova Scotia. He's our friend, and I'd like to welcome the Honourable Scott Brison up to speak.
Thank you, Colin, for that wonderful and warm welcome. It's great to be home, and I flew home from Ottawa last night. It's just great to be back. About a week ago when I was here, everything seemed to be kind of brownish, and now almost it just takes a few days in this time of year, and everything's so green and lush and beautiful, and it's great to be here. Abe Zabian's here as well, warden and from West Hants, and David Keith and Pauline Raven. I've got glasses, but they're for distance, and I don't need them for reading, so it's that kind of thing. I have to make a compromise in terms of that. My parents had a grocery store in Cheveree for almost 30 years, and they had a party line in there for both the house and the store, and the house was attached to the store. And there were several neighbors on the party line, and of course, depending on the number of rings or you'd know which one. Some of the neighbors were a little nosy, and they would pick up regardless. So my father had a trick, because he knew one of the neighbors was listening. So he had a trick. He would talk about putting flour on sale in the store. It wouldn't be 10 minutes after and she'd be over and dead. He said, no, there's no sale on flour this week. He also had a pretty heavy thumb on the butcher scale too. It's great to be here with you today, and I told that story to reflect on the changes that have occurred in our lifetimes in terms of the technology and how it unites us, how it has transformed not just our economy, but the way we interact with our fellow citizens. We're not just united by communities of geography anymore, but by communities of interest to people around the world on an ongoing basis. This is a great location. Bishop Hall and of course the Bishop family have on a multi-generational basis been part of. Oh, and I see Pauline Raven here as well. Good to see you, Paul. They have contributed significantly to this community, to the Annapolis Valley. I want to recognize that we are on the traditional territories of the Mi'kmaq people. And I want to thank Peter Mattart for hosting us today, and for all of you for being here, because this is an important day for rural and small town Nova Scotia. We all remember the advent of the internet and waiting impatiently to remember the melody of the dial-up getting frustrated if somebody else in the house would pick up the phone and ruin the connection. And, all of us were anxious at that time to get on the World Wide Web and learn exactly what was out there. We couldn't have imagined that 20 years ago it would become such an essential part of our lives. Kids today are digital savants. I mean, my 4-year-olds, Rose and Claire, sometimes I'll be playing something on my iPad for them in the morning while I cook them breakfast on a weekend. I'll play something from my childhood like The Sound of Music. And in about 40 seconds, I suddenly hear, Paw Patrol, whenever you're in trouble. In 40 seconds, they've swiped away Julie Andrews and have swiped in their favorite kid show. But more fundamentally, people work remotely. And grandparents connect with their grandkids through FaceTime today. In cases across the country and other cases around the world, more and more, the ubiquity of the internet has made it so that the prosperity of Canadians, the prosperity of rural Nova Scotians depends increasingly on access to high-quality, high-speed internet. High-speed internet is no longer a luxury. A few weeks ago, I was getting gas at a corner store in a rural community in our riding, and I was talking to somebody there, and he was telling me, I knew him, and we were chatting, getting caught up. He was telling me his daughter is studying dentistry at Dalhousie, and she likes to come home on weekends. But she finds it hard to do that because she has to do homework. And the rural community does not have access to the kind of high-speed internet she needs to do her research. And she has to drive 25 minutes into town to go to Tim Hortons to sit there and do her homework. Here's a case where somebody who is studying dentistry, doing really well, and her family justifiably proud of her, and she wants to come back on weekends and finds it hard to do so. It's a matter of equality of opportunities. The kids growing up in small town and rural Nova Scotia ought to have access to the same opportunities the kids have throughout, larger centers. That's why this government, our federal government, is investing in the Connect to Innovate program. It's investing $500 million to enhance and extend high-speed internet service across rural and small-town communities across Canada to give all Canadians a chance to be online. With this investment, we're bridging the digital divide and enabling our communities to participate fully in the global economy. I'm very happy to announce that under this program, Nova Scotia will receive over $17 million in direct federal funding. This money will support 27 high-speed internet projects that will help rural communities get online, get connected, and access opportunities. These projects will benefit 64 communities, thousands of households, and up to 80 institutions by providing high-quality internet access like they've never experienced before. Affordable access to high-quality broadband service is foundational to our government's Atlantic Growth Strategy, which focuses on immigration, innovation, investment in trade, and infrastructure. So what happens when you give Canadians the opportunity to connect? Suddenly where you live, your geographic boundaries no longer determine your possibilities. A whole world of opportunities opens up to you. You want to go back to school but not leave your community? You can do that online. You want to interact with and consult with a medical specialist but can't travel to them? You can do that online. You want to sell your products to a larger market. You want a great job but live remotely. You want to easily connect with family and friends across Canada around the world. You need high-quality broadband connectivity to do that. Connect to Innovate will allow Canadians to fully participate in the digital economy. It's an important step forward that will allow schools, libraries, businesses to achieve their full potential in underserved communities. And through the investments announced today, the municipality of the County of Kings and Bell Canada will provide 19 rural communities, including the Glooscap First Nation, with access to high-speed internet services, Communities in Kings County, Annapolis County, and Bernadette's riding will be impacted very positively. Minesville, East Walton, and Ashdale and Hants County will get that backbone infrastructure they need. The total investment in these communities, directly related to the specific proposal, Mayor Mattard, is $8 million. Now, my Nova Scotia caucus colleagues will be announcing the specific projects in their communities in the coming days. But Connect to Innovate is just one example of policies and programs we've put in place to ensure that innovation benefits the great many, not just the lucky few. Our government knows that we need to equip Canadians with the skills they need to succeed in the digital age, and that's why we're helping almost 1 million Canadian kids to learn how to code through our Can Code program. Through our $29.5 million digital literacy exchange program, we're making sure that all Canadians get the know-how to access the wealth of information and opportunities online. And through our $23 million accessible technology program, we're making it access to the digital economy easier for Canadians with disabilities. So over time, Canadians want to see lower internet and cell phone prices, and the best way to deal with affordability is through competition. And that's why our spectrum auction rules have been designed to get spectrum in the hands of those providers who will continue to drive prices down. More competition will lead to better quality services and lower prices for Canadians. All of these measures will position Canada at the forefront of the digital economy. Again, I want to congratulate the municipality of the County of Kings and Bell Canada on the projects in King's Hands. I am proud that the investments we're making will equip communities across Nova Scotia with the tools they need to succeed, to attract more people from across Canada and around the world to come and live and settle in what is the best place in the best country in the world. And this investment will build a more prosperous Canada and a more prosperous and diverse and successful Atlantic Canada. So again, I want to thank all of you for being here today, and our partners from Bell and the municipality of Kings and all of our partners across Nova Scotia who have been instrumental and are instrumental in moving this forward. So thank you very much.
Hey, this is one of those occasions when I wasn't supposed to have to come back. But following Minister Brison, we're to call upon MP Fraser to return to the podium.
I think that's changed.
That's changed. And yet the MC doesn't know.
Were you online this morning?
I don't know whether you heard that. The question was I online this morning? And if I were, if I had the proper connectivity, I'd have understood. So apparently, MP Jordan is about to come to the mic. Bernadette Jordan, of course, was elected as a member of Parliament for South Shore St. Margaret's in October of 15. Prior to her election, having been a development officer for Health Services Foundation of the province of Nova Scotia in Bridgewater, where she is practically famous for the amount of money that she can raise on worthwhile projects on short notice. So I'd like to call her to the podium, please.
Move down. I'm not sure if I'm on Ottawa time or Nova Scotia time. Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here this morning with you all for this wonderful announcement. And since Scott told a story, I have to tell one too, about internet. And before I was elected and I was the nominated candidate, a number of us went to Ottawa to talk to different people about when we were developing the platform. And they were talking about infrastructure. And there was a panel taking notes on everything we were saying. And I said, when we talk about infrastructure investment, can we talk about things we don't see as well as things we do? Not just the roads and the bridges, all those roads are extremely important. But I live in an area where there's still dial-up. And the one guy who's writing notes, his head pops up and he looks at me and he goes, "What's dial-up?" And I said, "You're 20 and from Toronto, right?" And he said, "Yes." Got it. So, so we've recognized for a long time that this infrastructure is so important to rural communities. And this announcement today, I'm going to look at the Minister of the Treasury Board and say, is the first step, because it's important that we continue to develop rural broadband across Nova Scotia. This announcement today is going to connect a lot of my community. I have a large rural riding, and it's going to be nice to see some of those places who have had dial-up for many years or nothing at all actually have some access to internet. And we were talking earlier about what this means. And this isn't about, Netflix, although it's great that you're going to be able to watch that. But this is the way the world is moving. And this is the way that we do business now. When you have, people selling lobsters in Barrington Passage that need to have access to internet to sell to China, that's what we need. It's not about just making sure you have entertainment. It's connecting us to the world. So this announcement today is extremely important to the people in my area, to the people here, and to the people across rural Nova Scotia and rural Canada. So on behalf of everyone from rural Nova Scotia, I want to thank Minister Brison for the announcement today and for the work I know he's done. Colin Fraser and I both sit on Rural Caucus and have been advocating for this for a very long time. I'd say it was our #1 priority in Rural Caucus for the last 2.5 years, so it's nice to see it actually coming to fruition. But on behalf of all of us, I want to say thank you, Minister Brison, for this great announcement today. I know it's going to mean a great deal to the people in my community, and as it is to the people here. Thank you very much.
I
I forgot one thing. I ought to have said that we also want to thank the Honourable Navdeep Bains, Minister of ISED, under whose leadership the Connect to Innovate program has really made a big difference and is making a big difference. So I want to thank Navdeep, who's been a great proponent of this, as well as the Atlantic Growth Strategy.
I'd just like to piggyback slightly because everybody's going against the schedule anyway. on the fact that, to your point, Minister Jordan or MP Jordan, Bernadette, the entertainment feature we've never had a problem with in this county. Because we entertain in our kitchens and our front yards and walking our trails and our shores. What we have had to struggle with is the very intelligent people that reside in this lovely community simply because this is the community and similar communities to ours in the valley where everyone wants to live, but they couldn't connect, they couldn't communicate. And so traveling back and forth to the example of the young Dent student, we've got that, we're going to get that fixed. All this money, all this leverage that's being provided to us by the federal government is a first start. Don't ever forget that we still have substantial funds that we need to bring to the table from the municipal side, and we're still looking for partners. And we're still looking for leverage wherever we can find it. So I just wanted to throw that in. The job is not done, but boy, it would never have been started without the announcement from the minister today. So now I'd like to call upon Keith Irving, MLA from Kings South. Keith is an architect and has served on Wolfville Town Council. I'm saying this because of your town council connections. It really qualifies you much more than other people. He was a town councillor in the town of Wolfville and Iqaluit Town Council. Keith is ministerial assistant to the chair of the Treasury and Policy Board. He's also chair of the Economic Development Committee and a member of the Community Services, Internal Affairs, Law Amendments, and Private and Local Bills Committee. Mr. Irving.
Thank you very much, Mayor Moutard, and it's wonderful to join you today in King South. Welcome, everyone. I'm the local MLA here, and I always try to give a very warm welcome to folks who join us here in King South, because King South is, of course, the warmest part of Kings County. I'm here on behalf of Minister Jeff McClellan, Minister of Business, and I'm joined here also by his ministerial assistant, Hugh McKay from the South Shore. And great to have you here, Hugh, and I hope the drive over was fine. We've got some potholes out there if you haven't noticed. So I just wanted to speak a little bit. Previous speakers have talked about the importance of internet, and I think we all know and understand that. I just want to put it within the context of our government. Over the last 4 years, the provincial government has put a huge amount of effort into developing and growing our economy in terms of education and training and job creation and innovation, which is at the forefront of governments really around the world. But we have to compete and we have to innovate and create jobs for all Nova Scotians. And that includes rural Nova Scotia. You know, in some ways, the connections that we need in rural Nova Scotia are about food security. It's about our exports in terms of our lobsters and fisheries and our agricultural exports and our food to feed Halifax. And that's how the world has changed in rural Nova Scotia. And one of the barriers for economic growth in rural Nova Scotia has been internet access. And certainly outside of pothole season, it's one of the top calls we get at our MLA office. How can I get internet? How can I get internet? I'm 7 kilometers from Wolfville, and I have to go to Tim's to run my business. Kids can't do homework. And we as a government are now asking citizens to get online to renew driver's license and registration. Well, if we aren't able to connect them, that's kind of a hollow ask of citizens. And so while the internet service has been led by business, they operate on a business model, and the economics of delivering it to rural Nova Scotia has always been a challenge. So that's why it's time now that government steps up and partners in reaching as many Nova Scotians as we can. The provincial government recently had completed the Bright Star report that really began to quantify what the problem and the challenge is for Nova Scotia, and identified that we needed $100 to $115 million of middle mile infrastructure. But it was going to be probably $300 to $500 million for this province to connect 95% of us. A huge challenge for the province. And that's why we need everyone working together on this. We were fortunate, as some of you may know, to win an arbitration hearing on the offshore oil and gas recently. And because of the Atlantic growth strategy and the priorities around internet, because of the commitment of our government to include rural Nova Scotia in economic development and job creation, $120 million was set aside for an internet trust, so that over the next number of years, we have the funds there in a trust to invest in the most appropriate and strategic way in the development of infrastructure. And that is through partnerships. We need to leverage those funds with our federal, our municipal, and business partners in the private sector to leverage that money and rise to this challenge of rural high-speed internet. So I'm happy to announce the first tranche of that $120 million today in that the government of Nova Scotia is putting $1.2 million into this these Connect Innovate projects, and that's a start. As the Minister said, this is the start of many more projects to come, because it doesn't, the work does not end, obviously, with these 60 or so projects. So this is a great testament for us to work together, municipally, federally, and business. And just to finish up here, I do want to, on the local level, applaud the County of Kings and the folks at I-Valley who have worked so hard to bring forward a project here in Kings County. And I know all of our constituents are very appreciative of your work, your investment, and commitment to high-speed internet. And finally, I want to thank Minister Brison for all of his hard work to bring these funds home to Nova Scotia to tackle this challenge that we have to invest in rural Nova Scotia and to continue to have the Valley be a leader in innovation and be part of such a wonderful place to live. So thank you very much.
I'm always worried at some point in time someone's not going to move down the line, I'll be on somebody's lap. Based upon, just to follow up, if I can for a second, on what Mr. Irving just said, one can actually feel the pulse of cooperation that's taking place at the present time. The partnerships are good between the federal government and the provincial government and the municipalities and amongst the municipalities. It's never been a better time to launch these kinds of things with the degree of cooperation that we're all experiencing between ourselves and with our businesses and the citizens in our communities. So that makes this event all the more important, because we've all had this objective in mind from the day that we took office. It's my pleasure now to introduce Mr. Glenn LeBlanc, and whom I haven't had the opportunity to meet yet, but I will as he approaches the podium. Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer of Bell Canada. He leads all financial strategy and operations with a capital market strategy focused on enabling Bell's industry-leading capital investment in broadband networks and service innovation and sustainable growth and dividend growth for the BCE shareholders. He assumed his role as Vice Chair Bell Alliant in 2017 with a commitment to champion the Bell network and community investment across Atlantic Canada. And he's here to comment on this wonderful announcement today. I call on Mr. LeBlanc. And it's a pleasure to meet you.
Real pleasure. Thank you, and good morning, everyone. First, let me echo the Minister's comments about it's great to be home. My career has taken me to working in Montreal and Toronto the last number of years, but I am blessed to be able to continue living in Nova Scotia. So it's a pretty good day for me when the Minister calls this event on a Friday. It just meant I had to get home earlier, which was a real nice to hear. I also wanted to comment, I know when Bernadette said that we're all excited to get high-speed internet and stream Netflix, she was meant to add, and Crave TV, Bell products, like CTV News and our beloved Montreal Canadiens and Toronto Maple Leafs. I know Bernadette wanted to add that. I thought I would help her out. Look, I am thrilled to be here today to participate in this exciting announcement alongside the Honourable Scott Brison, Members of Parliament Bernadette Jordan, Colin Fraser, MLA Keith Irving, and Peter Mattard, Mayor of Municipal of Kings County. On behalf of Bell and our 1,700 employees in Nova Scotia, I want to say how happy we are to partner with Government of Canada, the Government of Nova Scotia on these important investments in broadband infrastructure. We have a strong record of cooperation with governments and communities across Canada when it comes to the expansion of advanced communication networks. These partnerships have allowed us to provide rural and remote communities with access to the social and economic benefits that come with being on Canada's best broadband networks. Networks that connect us to each other and to the world, and that are the backbone of economic and social growth that you've heard over and over here this morning. For our part, and through our investments of $1.2 million, Bell will provide that access to more than 5,000 underserved and unserved homes in 34 communities in our beautiful province of Nova Scotia. This includes the deployment of fiber to the home, the world's best internet technology, in North Range, Digby area, the Glooscap First Nation, and Lawrencetown. These investments enable customers, businesses, and institutions in these communities to obtain information, offer services, and maybe most important, create opportunity. I would like to thank the Government of Canada and the Government of Nova Scotia for their support, and Minister Brison for his leadership on this incredibly important project. Partnerships are key to success, especially here in rural parts of our country. None of us can advance things alone, and it takes leadership, innovation, creativity, and collaboration. Together, I think that's what we're demonstrating here today. Thank you for joining us.
And so, absent one of these folks jumping up again, no specific references, those are the announcements for today. This is a wonderful day. This is an opportunity we've all been waiting for. Well, I was talking because Minister Brison he fears that I've left somebody out on my list of introductions of my fellow municipal leaders. I didn't, but I'm proud to repeat them all again. Warden Habinski is here. Mayor Cantwell, I saw him a moment ago at the back. Warden Zabian is here. Chief Peters was to have been here, but it's really good to hear his name included in this. And David Dagley from Bridgewater, or Liverpool, I guess it is. The regional municipality of Queens. There are those regional municipalities. You may have heard about them. All of those people are fully on board with this. They're so delighted to be able to deliver something to their citizens that they've wanted for years. So we're there, or almost there. We need that little extra bit of leverage to float the boat to the top of the Port Williams Wharf, but we'll get there. But bear with us and stay tuned, and we'll send you an email when we can. And I do look forward at the end of the meeting to discuss with Scott the old days at the general store and the dial-up internet, because I've never heard of that before. For now, however, we're going to proceed to the end of the day, and I want to make a couple of announcements. There's going to be a photo op, I expect, in this area here for the folks that are with the media. And then a media scrum will follow that for about 10 minutes or so. We know that these time frames get stretched beyond belief, so I'm going to leave it to the politicians to control the time. Can you believe that? During that scrum.
You're the politician, and you're
I said I would never be a politician. I don't really think I am yet. You can tell by the way I talk, right? Yeah. It's been wonderful. Thank you all very much for your participation here. Thank you so much for bringing us to this point in time, and we look forward to working with you as we go along the way. Thank you all for attending. We're now officially adjourned, and you'll go into your photo ops and your scrum with the press. Thank you.